Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is guide for round 19 of the Nations Cup. Let's get this started. When you're about to start your lap, use brakes and throttle at the same time to charge up the batteries. Now go ahead and straighten up the car and start to fully accelerate. Bring yourself to the right and brake when the sand on the right turns into tarmac. So you'll be braking here for a short while, braking as much as you can, and gently ease off the brakes so the car doesn't initiate any oversteer. Now slowly accelerate, bring yourself to the left and brake at the 2 board, gently ease off the brakes, gently start to accelerate. Now as you start to turn in before you reach the 1 board, you want to use a little bit of your braking power, then slowly start to accelerate. Make sure you do not make contact with the sand on the left. Now brake in between the 3 and the 2 board. Take your time transitioning from the brakes to the throttle. Now stay on the right and brake just before you reach the 2 board. You'll be using a very quick burst of braking. Then once you hit the apex, quickly get on the throttle. Don't get all 4 wheels on the green area, otherwise your tires will get dirty. Now brake at the 4 board on the right, so you'll be braking hard for a short while and gently ease off of the brakes as you're about to approach this first left turn. When you reach this empty area between all those trees, you want to carefully start to accelerate. Take your time just letting the car go through the corkscrew, slowly start to accelerate so it doesn't spin out. Then it's all about throttle control for these couple of turns. Bring yourself to the left and brake at the 2 board. Quickly get on the throttle as you exit the turn. Bring yourself to the right and brake before you reach the 3 board. Just like the hairpin and the corkscrew, you want to be careful with easing off of the brakes, that way the car doesn't initiate too much oversteer. Now go ahead, straighten up the car, fully accelerate, and you are good to go. But that's all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and talk about the strategies. For the qualifying strategy, you have 10 minutes to try to get a good qualifying time. And as you see here, I'm actually changing the tire compound since I was starting on the wrong ones. So you can do that in the lobby and in the actual qualifying session during the FIA race. So if you are on the wrong tires, just make sure you switch them out before you go ahead and pit on out. That way you don't have to go around, go into the pit stop and change tires. So just like in the lap guide that we saw earlier, you want to charge up the hybrid batteries. So starting at the corkscrew, you want to start to apply the brakes and throttle at the same time, so you can go ahead and charge them up. Make sure that you do not get in anyone else's way, and if someone is coming at you pretty fast, just make sure you get out of the racing line. So by the time that you are approaching the final turn, your battery should be charged up and ready to go. So then all you have to do is straighten up the car after the final turn and then start to fully accelerate. So for this qualifying session, you can do a couple laps. I would say do 1 to 2 laps, jump out of the qualifying session, and then jump back in. And this will be especially the case if you get your tires dirty during the out lap. So I would say before you approach the corkscrew, if you get them dirty, jump out and then jump back in. And if you get your tires dirty during your flying lap, once again, jump out and then jump back in. That way you do not have to suffer with the dirty tires as you finish your lap, and potentially have those dirty tires carry on over to the next lap, which will end up being nothing more than a waste of time. So at that point, you're better off just cutting off your losses, jump out, jump back in, and start over. And you want to be a little careful if you are under someone's slipstream, as the dirty air coming from them will affect the way that your car handles. So with the dirty air, your car will not have all the downforce it needs to get through some of the higher speed corners, which can affect your corner speed and the way that the car handles, which can potentially ruin your own lap time. So that is something that you do want to be a little careful of. And if you are not feeling comfortable being under the dirty air during the qualifying session, try to find a safe place to back off, or you can just once again jump out and then jump back in. And once again, you have 10 minutes to try to get a good time, so you have plenty of time to do what you need to do to get the best time possible. And before the qualifying session ends, before the race session starts, just make sure that you jump out into the menu. That way you can change the tires to the ones that you want to start with, especially if you are planning to do the one stop, which will not include the racing soft tires. Now for the race strategy, this is where it gets a little interesting and confusing in some way. So the tire strategy that you want to go with, and by that I mean the one stop or the two stop, depends on where you start. So the one stop includes the racing medium and hard tires, since those are the required tires for this race. And the two stop includes the racing soft, medium, and hard tires, since all three tires are available to use in this race. If we are starting at the very front, and by very front I mean first, second, or third place, it will be possible to do the two stop strategy and try to make a breakaway from the very start. That way, when you do your two pit stops, you run a smaller risk of pitting out into traffic or even behind traffic, as the dirty air is going to be a big issue for this race. With the racing soft tires, they can last up to 12 laps, and the racing medium tires, they can last up to 15 or even 18 laps if you take good care of them. So with the two-stop strategy, you have to try to get away from everyone. That way, when you pit out the first time and the second time, you run only a small risk of pitting out into traffic. And the less traffic that you pit out into, the better. And that is because of the dirty air. So with these high downforce cars, when they are exposed to dirty air, in other words, the slipstream that comes from the cars ahead of you, your car will not have all the downforce that it needs to get through some of the corners at its usual speeds. So because of that, the car will be more understeery, and it'll be pretty noticeable, as the car will struggle to rotate around the corners at its usual speeds. And that is because of the dirty air once again. So because of that, the tires will be scrubbed even more as you struggle to get the car to rotate around the corners, and you'll have to slow down a little bit so the car doesn't end up going too wide. So you slow down, your pace slows down, and the tires wear out more. So it's a nasty chain of events. And if you are doing the two-stop strategy and you end up behind a bunch of cars that are on another two-stop strategy or are doing the one-stop strategy, and you can't get around them as quickly as you can, then that's basically them throwing a wrench in your works, and it's going to end up ruining your race. So it's a pretty risky strategy, but if you are starting at the very front, it is possible to pull it off. So you can do racing soft tires, you can try to go as long as you can with them, up to around 12 laps before they start to go really bad. And then do the rest of the race minus 1 lap on the racing medium tires. That way you can save the racing hard tires for the very end and only do 1 lap with them. And it is interesting that the two-stop can be possible to do here, because even though the total pit time is pretty long here, the amount of time that you can make up by being on softer tires, and especially as the car gets lighter, will make up the difference. And the other strategy, which is the one-stop strategy, this is where you start on the racing medium tires and finish on the racing hard tires. Or if you are starting in the back, you can start on the racing hard tires and eventually switch on over to the racing medium tires. So the racing medium tires can last up to 18 laps if you take really good care of them, but if you constantly scrub them, or the car slides around too much, or if you end up under dirty air for too long, then you might have to end up pitting a little bit earlier, as the tire wear will be increased. So once again, if you are starting at the very front of the pack, it is possible to try to go for the two-stop, but the further back of the pack that you are in, then you're probably going to be better off just doing the one-stop. And if you're starting at the very back of the pack, start with the worst tire compound. That way you can eventually save the softer tire compound towards the later parts of the race. That way your car will go even faster, because your car won't have as much fuel than if you started the race with the softer tire compound. Speaking of fuel, The car that you're going to want to go with for this race will be the Toyota TS050. So this car has a really good pace, and it can also fuel save just enough to be able to make the whole race without needing to refuel. This car is about 1 second per lap faster than the Audi R18, in which that car also has to refuel, and it is around 1 to 1.5 seconds faster than the Porsche 919, so that car doesn't stand a chance against the TS050. So with this car, the way that you want to go about in this race when it comes to fuel saving is to shift at around 75% at every part of the track except for the main straight. When you're at the main straight, you can shift just as the bar is about to fill up. And when you're reaching the end of this main straight over here, you can short shift up to 6th gear. That way you can save a little more fuel along the way. So you're looking at using around 4% of fuel each lap. So if you can use around that much or even just a little bit less percentage of fuel per lap, then you should be good to go and you will not have to worry about refueling at all. But that is pretty much it for this guide. Hopefully this clears up a couple of things for you. And once again, just go with the Toyota TS050 since this car has the best pace for this track, and it can also fuel save just enough to not have to worry about refueling. But that is all from me. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is Mr. MCA, wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.